Welcome. Do you struggle to paint buildings, and particularly lots of buildings together? Well, on this video I'm going to show you how you can paint buildings and actually paint lots of buildings together and create a feeling of wholeness. And also, as a bonus tip, I'll show you how we can get natural looking colours. So let's watch the video.
With some yellow ochre to create some nice French sunshine, and we'll bring that down over the buildings, go for some nice warmth on those. Before it dries at the top here, let's get some blue on there. You'll notice that my palette is not clean at all, but the leftover paint will just mix into these blues and yellows and things and just make them more sort of natural looking colours rather than sort of bright colours straight from the tube. And the water, bring that down, so that's going to be reflecting some of that warmth, and then we'll finish with the blue. So you'll notice that's very similar to a lot of other paintings I've done, and I find that a lot of my watercolours, they're all much the same, just different subject. The actual method of painting doesn't really change a great deal. So we'll need to let that dry. So I can switch to smaller brush. So this is an Escoda Perla size 14. It's a new one, so it's got a nice fine point. So I think we'll go for putting some blue on the shadow parts of the buildings. So I need to make a decision which way the sun is going to come. So I'll say the sun is coming in from this direction. So sometimes it's not a bad idea just to put an arrow on your masking tape, just to remind yourself. So shadows will be coming off this way. So perhaps we'll have some of these buildings in shadow. So this brush is nicely loaded up, and the rooftops will be orange, so the blue and the orange are going to work well together. And then I can connect up all of these buildings, and we'll have a good mixture of warmth and cool. So maybe a bit of burnt sienna, so maybe a bit of warmth on that building. That's going to mix on there, just give us a little bit of a texture that could be stone, but this side of the building is going to be in shadow, and that one, do a bit of warmth maybe, so the sun's maybe creating a bit of a light on those, but we'll darken that once it's dried. We'll continue with that warmth over on this side just to make it interesting. So maybe this one's got a lot of warmth on it because that's getting the sunshine on it. So back to the blue, but notice I'm mixing on the paper rather than just mixing the colour and so on, because we need to add connection. And staying with a fairly limited palette, that the orange and the blue, we don't need masses of colours. And we'll have that as a rooftop there. This is kind of going off the page here, so don't need much in the way of detail there. And just suggest there. So I've come down here and I've got the trees to go in. So I think I'll put the trees in now while this is all wet, because it's an opportunity maybe just to connect a few things up, certainly over here. So let's go for a bit of yellow ochre and a bit of cobalt blue, so fairly strong paint, and this dark will make these rooftops seem lighter when I put the nice orange on there, and a bit of dry brush just to create the illusion of treetops and so on. And I can use the dark there just to sort of come around that rooftop and make a little bit more of that. And to add connection, let's just pull a dark under that rooftop there, and I'm just using that green which I've made. So the yellow ochre and the cobalt blue make a nice sort of natural looking green. And same under that one, same under that one. Maybe mix a bit of red and blue. So just making a slightly darker colour. So we can put a shadow down there. Maybe actually put some of that in there as well. And this side of the building, so it's not dried yet, so I'll get probably a soft edge there, so I can always sharpen that up afterwards. Dark under the eaves there, dark under there. This is adding connection, so I've not really looked at my reference picture yet really a great deal since I've done the drawing. Some windows, and with watercolour, that the more you have, you worry about what you're painting and have you got it right and all that sort of stuff, you sacrifice painting loose by doing all of that. I've forgotten this tower up here, because you don't do any of this stuff because you're not freeing yourself up to just paint. That it's not as easy as it sounds, I know, but ideally you don't want to have any worries when you're painting, particularly when you're a beginner. You always worry, is it going to be any good, or it's hard enough as it is to think about what you're doing without sort of adding yourself a little bit of pressure as well. But I know I sort of stressed about it for a long time, painting watercolors, because it's not easy. So I'm doing a lot of this wet into wet, but it will give a nice sort of soft effect and connect all this up, and then I can go back in afterwards and sharpen up any edges that need to. So again, clean washes, if I can do it with minimal amount of brush marks, at just 1 or 2 will be much better than 5, 6, 7 brush marks on there. So it's we'll definitely need a little bit of definition and detail in there.
If you've got this far, hopefully you're enjoying it. Please hit the like and subscribe, and stick around to show you how we can lift paint off of the paper to create that ripple effect and perhaps add a bit of interest in the foreground.
Maybe a few chimney pots just to break up that skyline a little bit there. So I think probably a good idea to maybe put in some more trees in this foreground while it's wet. But you get such good effects when you're painting wet into wet that it's worth just doing some wet into wet, even if you don't use it in the end and you paint over it. But if it's not there, you can't use it. So it's quite good to practice as well. But if I go in dry, when this is dried, and I'll give myself some nice hard edges across here. So a nice big tree there. So what we could do is have a go at painting these reflections while this is all still wet. Well, I'll make it wet, because like I've done in previous paintings where I've painted the boats and then the reflections straight away, what we don't want to do is have the objects that's not connected. So just some clean water, just wet this down here without disturbing it too much, and my board's at about a 30-degree angle, so we should get a bit of, I'll help it by just pulling it down a little bit. I want to make these nice and soft, and it's kind of knowing when to sort of stop and stop fiddling. That I normally do a little bit of a wash at the end, but I can do this now because this is already wet. So let's just clean that off. And again, this is why watercolour is so difficult, because I didn't really plan how I was going to paint this. That I'm just kind of just doing it intuitively. That normally I would have done this at the end, but now's a good time to do it. So let's do it now. So you have to change your plan all the time with watercolour. So this purple will work well with what was there. So not to fiddle with it too much, so a little bit stronger. So I think we'll let that, well, actually before we let it dry again, I've got to think about what I'm doing, that it's still just slightly damp here. So if I put these darks in on these windows now, they will soften, whereas if I wait for it to dry, they'll kind of look stuck on. So a bit of brown and blue. So this is real thick paint, almost sort of straight from the tube. So we've got a window there, there. Maybe just put some more of that dark in under there. Got a couple of windows there. Again, get that dark under there. Maybe. So this is what I mean by not sacrificing detail for a nice wash. That it's quite nice how this is kind of connected to all these kind of three shapes. But I could go darker with that. But actually, I think it'd be better not to, and just keep that as a quite a nice wash there. So we'll do that. So there's a window there, maybe a chimney pot there or something. So windows, yeah, make them all kind of slightly different. There's a jetty or something there. Could possibly go a little bit darker with that green while this is still damp. So again, it's just knowing about timing with watercolour. It's just damp enough so I could just darken it at the base of that water's edge there. But a couple of seconds more and it'd be too dry. So I think we will dry that off now. So some trees over this side. So we'll add a bit of light, maybe add a little bit of a orange glow around those trees a little bit. Not a lot of paint on the brush there. And now mix some more of that green. So this is thick paint, not a lot of water. And now I can just create those again, sort of marks that could be trees. And just a little bit more water, it's a little bit. Just cut around the shapes, which will help define those rooftops, but maybe I'll just leave a little bit of a highlight. And again, just painting it simply, these trees, maybe there's a tree goes down behind there. But just make sure I leave plenty of sky holes through there. Across the top of that one. And we'll just have a slightly higher one there. So that's worked okay. So maybe we've got not a lot going on in the sky, so put some in there. So do need maybe a little bit of something in the foreground, so maybe a boat that we can go for. Try and lift out some paint. So let's put a boat here. Maybe we've got it's quite light here, but we'll just let's go for just lifting out some paint. Just clean water. Just work the paper, and now just some clean tissue. So it's quite light, so it's just enough just to give a little bit of a highlight of the boat. And now I can just put the base of the boat, maybe the top of the boat, and Gentleman there rowing his boat. And also we're going to need a reflection under there. So just take up, lift up a little bit of that. As we could add some colour maybe on the boat. Maybe there's some blue would work quite well. So some cerulean blue straight from the tube. Just put a bit of detail on that boat. Make it a blue boat. And we could just put a couple of boats by the jetty there, and then that'll be finished. Maybe a couple of figures. Let's get on that boat. Again, it's always good to try and tell a story. Some stuff around there. Softness now I'm fiddling, so that's time to call it a day on that one. That something like this would be a good idea to have a look at it again tomorrow and see, could we add something to it. Always looks good taking the tape off. That nice crisp edge. So the colours are quite nice on that actually, that the orange works well with just that little bit of blue, and the purple, we've got the purple here as well, so it's nice sort of graded part to the water there, and has a feel of light. But again, just very simply painted. The buildings aren't correct at all, but this one was fairly accurate, so that's enough. That's what made me want to paint it, was this building here.
So if you enjoyed that and you want to paint buildings in this loose style, watch this video where I'll paint another building in a French village.